Hello everyone, in the last video I am showing how to exchange objects with the NPC. Now in this chapter, I am adding one more event for NPC. Let's turn the NPC into something. If you want to know more how I code this, please stay tuned. Unfortunately, I just gave him the blue potion he wanted. I don't know how I turn him into a frog. The above process, how we can program it in Python using pygame. Let's get started. As you see here, we found the smoke which animate only once in the game. So, this is a typical use of particle. So, let's make a particle class for it. Class particle, now inheriting the animated sprite class which I had built earlier. This inheritance allows me to use the animated class variables as well as its functions. As usual, defined under init method, we will inherit position, frames, and groups. And here we just want to copy all these, right? And then paste them into it. And super.init and also inherit all these variables. To run the animation, we usually need to define frame index. However, in this case, since we inherit from the animated class, so we don't need to define them again, which is great. What we need now is to define the self.image, which is the first frame index of self.frames, which is the list containing all the images for the animation. So self.image equals self.frames, and with the index referring to self.frameIndex. As you see, frame index is not defined, but Python isn't complaining because this frame index is inherited from the animated class here. Next is the self.rect, which is to get the rectangle to the image, with the top left being the position. Finally, self.z equals z, which is the screen depth layer. This variable defines who draw on the screen first. Then let's make the animate method. The same way, the self.animation speed is no need to be defined because of the inheritance. Now if self.frameIndex larger than or equal to size of self.frames, that is the number of images in the self.frames, then we know we already reached the end of the frame. That means we can kill that animation by using self.kill. Else self.image will refer to self.frames with the index being the self.frameIndex. Be careful that self.frameIndex must be an integer. Finally, we make the update method so that we can update the image in every game loop. Define update, and in this method we just call the self.animate method. Kindly note that this animate method will always overwrite the original animate method from the inheritance. Now let's work on the turn into method within the inventory class. We need NPC and items input as the arguments at the moment. So if the current item.name which I selected is equal to the input item, and the interaction with the NPC has not finished, then I will do something here. First thing to do is that the NPC will turn to different replies or responses by changing NPC state. If you look at the gamedata.py, you will see that I had made a large dictionary containing all the dialogues for the NPC and player. They will give different responses depending on what the state the NPC is. So, let's make some dialogues here. You will see these dialogues later when I run the game. Here I finished one portion of the dialogue for player and NPC. As you see, different states include encounter, delight, and furious. These are the dictionary's keys. By changing the key, the character will have different lines of dialogues. So, here is a simple system for storing the dialogue data. Next, we have to remove the item from your inventory because you're supposed to give this object to the NPC. I had made self.removeItem function earlier above. Now it's time to create a particle object. How can we do? First of all, we need to import the particle class from the class we built earlier in the video. So from sprites, import particle. Let's go to the previous location. After removing an item, we should instantiate one object belonging to particle class. So, particle, the first argument being the position, so npc.position. If you check our NPC class here, you will see there is position attribute already here. We can just say npc.position, next is frames. For the frames I haven't defined yet. Now let's use one of the function that I created earlier in my support.py, where I use the import folder function that will turn the image files into a list of images used for the animation. Let's create something here in the animation frames dictionary. Now it's still an empty dictionary. I would like to have a frog. If I become a frog, what we're gonna do? Firstly, get the frog frames. So from support, import the function called import folder. Here I would say import folder and then under the graphics folder and then under the animation directory and then we have the particle folder. Inside the particle we want to get the smoke frames. So that's pretty much it. This one will return a list. If you see the import folder function, you will know this. Okay, back to this particle. Now we have our frames. Let's import these frames. From game data, import animation frames, right? We want to import the frames that we just created. If you see earlier, we already created this dict. Go back to here. What we need is animation frame. Sorry, I should not have used the name frog, because it is a particle. I should have used the name smoke instead. Let's correct it. So here it would be the animation frames and the key is smoke. So next is the groups. We will pass self. Let's check what kind of groups to display. Actually, we don't have the sprites. We need to pass the sprites which to be displayed on the screen from the level.py. Now we are in the level.py. Let's look for the inventory class that I created earlier. Okay, I can see here. I can see that I create this instance here. Now let's pass some sprites to the inventory class. Before you passing the sprites, you need to make sure these sprites had been created before you pass them to this function. Let's check. Okay, self.setup is above us. Okay, let's type self.allSprites. It becomes red because we have 3 arguments now, so I have to add back one to the inventory class. Here it is, let's type all sprites. And under the init method, self.allSprites equals all sprites. That complete the initialization. Now we can put self.allSprites here, and then we need to pass the layers. We used the key main for the layer. These layers can be found in the settings.py, and finally we have the animation speed, let's say 0.2. So that should pretty much it. Next I need change the NPC frames. I need to change to what? I need to change to a new frames. Let's go back to the previous dict. I define a new frame called frog, import folder as usual. Here the image size is too small. Let's modify the size of the image to the tile size. To do that, we have to go back to the support.py. And then here in the support.py, let's modify by adding one statement. Frame equals pygame.transform.scale. And the image to scaled up to tile size. Alright, now we have a frog frame. Now we should have ready the frog frame. Now I have to look for the frog frame, under the graphics folder and animation and then particles. Within the frog frame, we are using graphics and then animation and then particles under the particles folder. Here I have giant frog, here shows the images. So the name is giant frog. We just animate this frame. The frame will become animation frame and the key is frog. Now we could use the animation frames and the key is frog. Lastly, we have to define interaction finished is true and self.display inventory to be false. Finally, we call the self.create dialog function with the argument being the NPC. Here should finished all we need. Back to the here, we no longer need this function. Let's change back to self.turnInto and pass the arguments NPC and item input. The first argument being the NPC, and second one to be the item we supposed to give to NPC. So here delete the scroll empty. Alright, we should be good to go now. Let's run it. Well, it doesn't crash. It's a good sign. Let's collect the beef. And then I have a conversation with the NPC. Now I intend to give him the food, and in return I got a blue potion. Great. He gave thanks to me. Now I have the blue potion, what I gonna do? Let's go to find the old man. He may have something for me. The old man asked me to have a deal. Let's give the blue potion to him. Oh my God, he turned into a frog. Oh, no, he is very angry. I said sorry, but I have nothing to help him. Let's code his destiny in the next part. The story will go on. In this process, you will see the smoke, which is the particle effect which I have just built. If you look at the conversation and dialogues, they are just the one I typed in earlier. So, this event has been completed. That's the end of this video. To know what happened to him, please stay tuned and I will continue to make the story and program his destiny. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.